Welcome to the Sales Lead Dog Podcast, hosted by CRM technology and sales process expert Christopher Smith, talking with sales leaders that have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. Listen to find out how the best of the best achieve success with their team and CRM technology. And remember, unless you are the lead dog, the view never changes.
Welcome to Sales Lead Dog. Today on Sales Lead Dog, I am joined by Ian Spandow. Ian works with sales teams and leaders to rethink how they approach modern selling, especially in environments where buyers are more informed, more skeptical, and less tolerant of traditional sales tactics. His work focuses on improving how sellers show up in conversations, differentiate themselves, and create value earlier in the buying process. Ian, welcome to Sales Lead Dog.
Nice to see you, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing great. Now, you've spent a long time helping organizations why deals stall, why discovery falls flat, and why sales teams struggle to stand out. Let's take go back to the beginning. How did you get started on this journey that you've been on?
So I was, I guess what you might call a nerd. I was a kid who was born at the right time that the first home computers in the 80s were emerging, and my brother and I were both dead interested in playing around with our computers, but never thought that it'd be a career. I can actually remember my mother coming into the bedroom and saying, "Stop playing with that toy and do your homework." And of course, the toy became my career. But from a sales point of view, the Kirby vacuum cleaner company came to my family home in Ireland in the early 70s and sold my dad a vacuum. And I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. It was an American salesperson, and we'd never seen a real live American before either. So It was like a celebrity visiting your house. And they did the whole demo, and they used all sorts of techniques that years later I learned were tried and tested sales techniques. But at the time, of course, you just thought this is genius. Yeah. And my father was an Air Force pilot, a fighter pilot. So you can imagine he didn't suffer salespeople typically too well, or politicians or anybody else who came to the door. But this guy was just fantastic. Yeah. And that same Kirby vacuum cleaner stayed in that home for about 25 years, by the way. So turned out to be a good investment. But by the time I graduated school, I thought, well, I know about code. I was tapping code at the time and writing little programs. And I had this fascination about how these people had sold my grumpy Air Force father on a very expensive vacuum cleaner. Yeah. So actually started a company building learning products using very early 286s and things like that. And for early part of my career was actually developing learning titles, CD-ROMs, that kind of stuff, and then selling them.
That's wild. You also are an author. You've written a book, Rescuing Dogs and Salespeople, Memoir of a Mutt. I love the title.
Yeah.
Tell me the genesis of this idea, I need to write a book.
So delivered training in 32 countries, over 9,000 students across my career, about 5,500 of them at Oracle Corporation, where I managed the Europe, Middle East, Africa sales coaching team. And everywhere I went, we Irish were storytellers, right? And everywhere I went, a lot of times people would come up to me at the end of the class and they'd say, "Ian, you should write a book." I kind of never really thought of it. Years later in life, my wife and I started a dog rescue 5 years ago that we run from our home here in California. And I started noticing the similarities in training salespeople and training dog packs. The dogs, for instance, are treat rewarded typically in order to learn, and salespeople get commissions and Rolexes and spiffs, and we dangle treats in front of them too. And great sales teams have a very strong alpha leader who's always fair, but very positive. And dog packs, the pack leader in my dog pack is a 38-pound poodle mix. And he bosses around German Shepherds, Mastiffs, livestock guardian dogs, no problem. And he's a third of their weight. But again, he's extremely fair, right? And he's very, very firm. So there's rules and you don't break the rules, right? And I've worked with a lot of sales leaders who have some things in common. The mutt part of it came about because, as you can hear, I have an Irish accent, but a German name, a French mother, a Zimbabwean father. My wife is from Texas. I live in California. I am a mutt in the truest sense of the word. Immigrant son of an immigrant, son of an immigrant. Yes. So going back to 3 generations, been moving around the world. I actually have 4 grandparents. They're all passed now, but my 4 grandparents were from 4 different continents. Yeah. So one from Argentina, one from Africa, one from Asia, one from Europe. So you don't get much more of a mongrel than me, Chris.
No, that's great. So who are you targeting this book for, and what's the benefit to a reader of getting your book?
Well, I hope that they'll get some sales lessons and some sales ideas. Like I say, I had a lot of experience across all the methodologies and what have you, and I talk about the ones that I think that work in certain regions or certain markets and others that don't. I noticed an awful lot, certainly here in America, a lot of my students were dog owners. I mean, a lot of them. San Francisco, I lived in 10 years, and almost everybody has a dog in San Francisco, right? And it's a very dog-friendly place. And people would frequently ask me questions about dog training and dog behavior and things like that. So I thought, well, there's 1,000 sales books out there, right? How's my one going to maybe have something a little extra in it? And I thought, well, there's a lot of people who are dog owners or dog adjacent, if you like. And also, the end of the book is really trying to encourage people to adopt and foster. We're actually in a crisis situation in the US since the pandemic. A lot of people fostered or adopted dogs thinking, oh, I'm going to be home now and I can hold on to this dog and train. And then they went back to work. And unfortunately, the local rescues are just full. And we're over capacity. Every rescue group I know in America is over capacity right now. So there's a big call to action really about very few people, I always say, will get the chance to save a human life in their lives, but anyone can save a dog's life.
Yep.
Even if it's just a week as a temporary foster or something like that to get them out of a bad situation.
Yep, that's awesome. So let's dive into what you do for a living. What type of clients do you engage with these days?
For the most part, technology clients. These days, of course, a lot of AI and SaaS clients, right? UK, Europe I speak a few languages. I speak French and German as well, so I can work in different languages. Here in the US, a lot of Bay Area startups. I was at MongoDB before they were called MongoDB. I was the enablement leader there. A lot of the people from that company, of course, have expanded out and started other startups and what have you. So for the most part, anybody who has a go-to-market team, not just sales training per se, but an enablement. I've obviously done it for as long as I have. Tools, things like that. I've got quite a lot of fluency with some of the sales platforms and tools. And a lot of companies aren't quite at the stage where they need a full-time enablement lead or a full-time role, but they do need help with onboarding or something like that. So my customers are typically those sort of 200 to 500 round about that space, where they don't have an in-house team, or they maybe just have one person who's doubling up on another job.
Yeah, and it's hard to be successful doing that and have a meaningful impact.
Yeah.
So what originally pulled you into sales strategy and working with sales teams? That's a big adjustment.
Yeah, my company went under in 2011, a couple of months after the 9/11 attack. My customers were all on Wall Street. Several of them were actually in the South Tower. I didn't even have anywhere to send an invoice. So at that point, Oracle had been a customer of mine. I built training for Oracle previously. So they were expanding and growing and acquiring new companies. I joined Oracle in 2004 as their first ever sales coach. Larry Ellison famously wasn't a big fan of coaches and people that were carrying a number. I ended up building a coaching team across the region. And the great thing about large corporations like Oracle is they have the budgets to send you for all the right certifications, right? So we did Infomentus and Spin and Sandler and all that good stuff. And I got all the right badges for it, and so did my team. And harking back to that sales guy I told you about who sold my parents a vacuum cleaner, it was only when I started taking those methodology courses that I realized those guys were using all these techniques. I thought it was just as straightforward as it's all. I mean, they were doing the negative reverse, for instance. They were saying, well, this vacuum cleaner is really for hotels and restaurants. It's really more of an industrial level, probably not suitable for a home like yours. And my dad being the type of person he was, don't ever tell him he can't afford something. So years later, when I learned this in class, I was like, wait a minute, that's what that guy was doing. He was using a negative reverse or whatever. There's some other techniques in there as well. But I got kind of fascinated by it, and then moved to a couple of different startups, MongoDB and Riverbed and companies like that, where they hadn't had that methodology training. They really hadn't had any what I would call professional sales training, but they had was their manager leading a workshop, or some of them did have actual professional instructors, if you like, but for the most part, they really didn't. And like I was, as soon as they realized techniques and actual skills that they could practice and get better at, they were like, yeah, give me more. I've been doing this on the seat of my pants the whole time. give me a format, give me a process, explain to me how this can be rinsed and repeated, and that makes my job much easier. So thus far, I'm hoping before I retire to hit 10,000 students. I'm at 9,100 and something right now. So squeeze in another 900 and I hit that 10,000 mark.
That's a good goal. That's a good goal. I like that 10,000. Hey, we're taking a quick break to thank you for listening to and supporting the Sales Lead Dog podcast. I want to take a moment and tell you about my book, CRM Shouldn't Suck. If your CRM feels more like a black hole for data than something that actually helps your team sell, you're not alone. The book breaks down why CRMs fail for so many businesses and what you can do about it. No fluff, just real strategies that work. So go to crmshouldn'tsuck.com to order your free copy right now. That's right, we're giving it away. And while you're there, take 2 minutes to check out the CRM Impact Score. It's a quick diagnostic that shows you how your CRM is really performing, where it's helping you and where it's hurting you. You'll get a personalized report with clear, actionable next steps you can start right away to maximize your CRM investment. We've also got blogs, videos, and a bunch of other resources to help you finally get the results you were promised when you bought your CRM. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes of Sales Lead Dog. Okay, let's get back to this episode of the Sales Lead Dog podcast. I like that 10,000. What do you see sellers consistently getting wrong in their early stage conversations? Because I do think that's where we mess up the most.
Well, as an enablement guy, I've been buying technology all this time as well. So you wear both hats. And it really grates. It really grates. Number one thing that frustrates me, and by the way, I answer my phone a lot more than normal people do. And the reason is that because of the nature of my job, I'm kind of always interested in what the latest pitch is. So I'll give any salesperson 30 seconds, like no matter what they're selling. But what irks me, and I think it's a challenge that I've seen at every company I've worked at, is that they don't qualify me. And that I get the elevator pitch or the 30-second commercial or the value proposition before such time as they've even qualified me. So it's like my biggest instruction to my students is don't mention anything about yourself, the company, the product, the service at all until you've worked out whether that's the right person to actually be saying it to. So typical example, hi, we've got this product or service I wanted to show you. And I say, well, look, I'm a one-man band. I don't have a company here. I'm an independent person. Probably have my information from when I worked in a larger company. I wouldn't be a good customer for you. And as soon as I've stopped speaking, they'll say the next thing on their script. I almost want to just shake them and go, did you not hear what I just said? I think being in the moment, I think is the top skill for salespeople is being in that moment right there. I encourage people to use phrases like loud and clear. If somebody says something to you, say loud and clear. Recognize that you heard what they said. And the same with emails or any of the other kind of prospecting methods, right? It tends to oftentimes be about the selling company and not about the buyer. So where I've had success with this, when I went from Oracle to MongoDB, right? So Oracle, massive huge corporation, everybody knows them. MongoDB at the time, very few people had heard of. And their pitch at the time was, we've got this anti-relational document level database, which is quicker, faster, better than Oracle. And they were getting where you would think, kind of nowhere fast.
Yep.
So we flipped the script. And the question that we asked was, how much of your attention would I get if we could save your Oracle spend by about 90%? And there were prospects that were literally saying, you can come over this afternoon if you can save my Oracle spend. Because for big companies, Oracle is like PG&E, right? It's just, you've got to pay it every month and big ticket. And they didn't really care about how the data was stored or who was storing it or what the interface was. They just needed to store the data. So reframing the value proposition, not being about technology at all, but being about, you're probably spending a lot of money every month with Oracle and we can reduce that bill hugely. And at Mongo, we had customers whose employers still thought they were using Oracle databases.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, they literally, these guys, because it was free, it's open source. So you could work on MongoDB all day long. You just had to pay for maintenance and support and that kind of stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
So a lot of these DBAs were doing exactly that. They were spinning up their own instances. Their bosses were saying to them, why am I getting such faster responses from the database? And they'd have to kind of fess up and go, well, I know you're spending $100,000 a month with Oracle, but actually we've been using this open source database and does everything we needed to do.
Yeah. And that's ultimately what people want. I talk about that all the time. Nobody buys Oracle or My World, Salesforce, or any other CRMs because they love CRM. They're doing it because they want it to do something for them. They want the outcome that that tool can deliver. And so that's when I talk to people, I'm like, look, CRM, like any other piece of technology, it's a tool.
Yeah.
That's it. And you need to treat it like a tool. You need to make sure you have the right tool for your job.
Yeah. Simple as that, right?
Yeah. So when you engage with a client, what's that process look for you these days? And has your process changed over, let's say, the last 5 years, especially with the advent of AI coming in?
Very much so. In fact, you mentioned AI. That's really the reason after my last role, I decided to go independent and just do things myself. My wife and I were spending much more time with the dog rescue anyway. And I realized that AI, I mean, there were people I had on my team just 4 years ago that I wouldn't need today. Yeah. Right? So I produce all my documentation, my slides, everything else, just using AI tools, right? I produce podcasts and videos using Notebook LM for onboarding. And I would have had technical writers, graphic designers, multimedia developers, all sorts of people on my team. Like I say, like WalkMe was one of the companies I was at. I had 5 on my team to provide what I basically provide myself now to my customers. So the writing was definitely on the wall for a lot of those sort of non-delivery roles, right? Like obviously subject matter expertise is always going to be valuable and people will always need that. But a lot of the other things, like, I mean, I'm using a tool called Chamber AI, which is a role play tool. It's as close as God damn it could fool you were talking to a person. I mean, everything about it, the tone, the vocabulary, but more importantly of all, the pushback, the objections are very realistic to what I, as a buyer of technology, would be saying. So where I used to have sales coaches running 8-hour role play sessions or workshops or what have you, I can now just send a link and it'll score them and it'll show me and it'll even give me some coaching tips on how to improve them, if you like. Right. So yeah, I don't want to be that alarmist guy or anything like that. But in my particular world, AI has very definitely removed a bunch of the roles that used to be necessary.
Yeah, and that comes up a lot in my conversation with people when we talk about AI. And I don't think there's a lot that AI, well, let me start over. I don't think AI will replace all the sales roles because you still need, like the SMEs you were talking about, it's still human relationships that you need to establish and maintain. But the AI that I'm seeing coming out of Microsoft and some of these other companies where someone can email in, hey, I want to order this, an AI bot, an agent can read that email, create the quote, whatever, send it back to them, support the email exchange back and forth as the quote gets adjusted and finalized.
Right.
No salesperson's touching that. And so we have clients, a lot of clients that they get a lot of very low margin orders that are small orders that are no margin orders to where if they have a human touch it, they've immediately lost money on it. Well, if I can route that stuff through AI, now I'm getting thousands of those orders a year that I'm not making any money on. Now I'm getting margin on those because I can have AI do it and AI can do it at the snap of a finger versus a day or two for my staff. That's where I see it in the near future having the most impact in sales. Do you have a different vision or perspective from mine when it comes to?
I agree with that on the commercial sort of small to medium SMB type of deals, right? Transactional, high volume. Absolutely. I know some customers they're using AI, but they're giving it a persona and a person name. So the people that are actually interacting think that it is a human being. And there may be some sort of cursory once a week check on that by a human being, but for the most part, yeah, smaller transactions. What I have seen now with enterprise sales is, yeah, it's never going to replace anyone, but there are a couple of tools now that are like an AI teammate. Right. And you can bring them onto a call and it's like having a personal assistant / researcher on hand for the call, right? Yep. There's one by a company called Vivin, And they're a customer of mine, actually. And they have an AI sales agent they called Ava. She has a really pleasant female voice. She's an animated character, and you can invite her to a Zoom or a Google Meet or a Teams meeting or whatever else. Right. She'll show up as an individual and literally real-time answer some of those questions or provide some of those technical details or research historical precedent, whatever it might be. Right. Things when I was selling, I would have made a note of, and I'll be getting back to you on that in 2 days' time.
Yeah.
So this is truncating sales cycles, I think, a lot. Tools like that, where none of the people on the call know the answer to that question. And it's perfectly okay to say, hey, by the way, we're going to be joined by an AI teammate, because if there are facts, figures, specifications, or anything like that that you might ask about, she'll not only answer them, but she'll email you exactly that as you've asked them right now in real time. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's the part that I had a discussion, I think a week ago, we're having an AI conversation with an individual, and we were talking about how AI can be that assistant that makes us look a lot smarter. We have a client that they have over 100,000 products in their product catalog. There's no way their sales team can stay on top of all those. So when you're like, hey, I need a product that matches these specs, instead of having this crazy filter that I have to run against this huge product database, I could just type a normal language query into an agent and give me back all their products that match or near match for these specs. And that's instant, makes me look very smart and keeps the conversation going with the customer. I'm not hitting pause for 2 or 3 days and, well, let me come back to you with that. I can get the answer right now and keep the conversation moving.
Yeah. Well, I've had customers who said to me, Ian, we're really not interested in AI. How much AI are you using? That kind of stuff. And I literally I say as much as I possibly can. Yeah. And then they'll say, well, wait, we're hiring you for subject matter expertise or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, and I can get it to you